Morning, everybody. It is Saturday, November 15th, 2025. And figured I'd make a quick video. So, at last, it appears that Texas politicians are waking up and finding the latest and greatest. During the FJB administration, earlier stages of it, it was becoming very, very, very well reported that Soros money was being poured into Texas to turn Texas blue or at least purple. And nothing pisses off a Texan like somebody trying to mess with our way of life. God, guns, and guts. In that order. And if you look at the demographic maps, usually available on most platforms, you'll see that primarily the blue areas that are actually in Texas are centralized into our major cities like Austin and Houston. And you want to know why that is because typically major cities like Dallas, like Austin and Houston, are the democratic social system is a way of life there. That's where food stamps, that's where welfare, we call them welfare states. Well, in Texas, it's more of a welfare city. You're not really going to get rid of to shift a major city like Houston red because there's already so much embedded poverty or in those cities. So the social programs are the main draw to those cities. But everybody, the latest and greatest, and I have made several videos about this, it has finally made the news about the Islamic slow takeover of small cities in Texas. And there is such a thing in Texas. Don't know if it's necessarily just Texas, but it is a social phenomenon that it is actually well written and well documented, called white flight. And what typically happens is whenever, like when Houston became a blue city and stuff like that, where the social programs are the dominant force, the white population, middle class, middle upper class, will actually move away from those cities into more rural areas. And it's not, I'm not saying that, it's just that's what it's called, white flight. Middle class tends to move out of those cities. And that could be any race. White flight also happens when a dynamic changes in a city that is distasteful. So what's happening is that we know from the demographics of the voter demographics that, 90% of Texas is red. And the areas that are actually red in Texas are the rural communities, small town Texas, and things like that. And they are blazing solid red. Oh, well, without a socioeconomic anchor, it's very, very hard for the blues to actually infiltrate them red zones. And Texas is a very, very big state. But in the 4D chess scenario that is being played out, and I don't know necessarily if it's being played out by an American playbook or a worldly playbook, but this is happening all over the world. It's the most prolific of these happenings is in Germany and in the UK. Germany let in a lot of refugees in the early 2020 area. And now Germany is extremely Islamic. You think of Germany, you think of, pastries and cheese and knockwurst and bratwursts and beer maid dresses and, oompa music and stuff like that. No, it's almost not that anymore. The culture is being bred out. The Muslim and the Islamic State that came in there as refugees are now they are more prolific than even the Catholics and the Mormons about having just a gajillion kids. And that's what's happening, is they're getting in there, they're taking refugee status, and they're getting their citizenship there, and they're just multiplying like, rabbits. Well, we are a bigger country than, Germany or the UK. And the thing about America is America is like its own world. It's whereas like in Europe, you drive, for an hour, and you could go into different countries within, an hour's drive anywhere in Europe. In America, every state has really its own flavor, much like its own country. So what they had to do is we brought in refugees. We brought in a lot of refugees. And what's doing is They are now doing the exact same thing on a state-by-state level. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but we do have some Muslims actually in our state. The state of Texas's Congress. And I mean, at the moment, they are just there. They're not making waves and stuff like that. They're smart. They're waiting their turn because Texas is a big red state. But they're there. I've been reporting about the Islamic compound just south of south of Angleton here in Texas for years now. And it's just a compound. It's not growing very much. It's not moving. It's very quiet as far as it's staying under the radar. Problem is, it's a no-cop area. Police will not go into that area. State troopers will not go into that area. The only ones who would probably go into that area is the National Guard. The area is very well mapped around its borders and everything by the police force, of course. They know what's going on out there. But it is a training and recruiting area. Or, as the news likes to call it, it's a radicalization compound. It's where, people go, whenever they report, he was radicalized. That's where they would go and do that. They would train them and do stuff like that. We now have, a small city in Texas that is changing street signs to reflect Islamic names and tribute names, like they're naming streets after known terrorists and suicide bombers and things like that. And they are not shy about it. They've been on the news and been, in many social media chat threads, dancing and wailing in the streets, the hey, we're here, we've established, and but here's the deal: is it too far gone? Because what's the deal is we gave them refugee status, and they became naturalized citizens. They're using our immigration system, as flawed as it is, to do what they're doing. Our naturalization system is very, very slow, so they're being very, very quiet. They don't rock the boat until, the boat needs to be sunk with a bomb. So, what do we do with these people? They are now technically citizens of America. We've passed a law in Texas as on a state level banning Sharia law. They have openly and publicly announced that they are not going to give a rat's ass about that law, and they're going to continue doing what they're doing, practicing Sharia law, forcing a unconstitutional judicial and penal system outside of the state-sanctioned penal system. And they're trying to do this in other states, in other cities in Texas, on a much smaller basis. But hear me out, guys. This is a zombie parasite situation where the parasite gets into the host body, it grows and grows and grows, and it takes over. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, if it comes down to a civil war in America, I don't necessarily know if it's going to be a red or blue situation. It's not going to be a North versus South kind of a situation. It may be Christianity versus Muslim. The problem is that if it does come down to a C versus M civil war, who's to say that the purple-haired septum-piercing population won't run blocker, won't run guerrilla warfare in the favor of the M's. They're already so brainwashed that they walk hand in hand protesting, the Palestinian war, pro-Palestine, for whatever reason that they've been brainwashed in it, in a religious situation. The Muslim faith, the Islamic, the Muslim faith is very zealot, focused, and are 100 million% against homosexuality and alternative lifestyles. And more importantly, most of the purple-haired septum-piercing persons, populace, are atheist or agnostic. What happens whenever they are forced? Will they wake up in time when they are forced to either become Muslim or die? I mean, that's basically, how it works with the radicalized Muslim faith. Let's roll.